right, welcome back into the channel and welcome in for another Tuesday tier list. Every single Tuesday on the channel will be tier ranking every single NFL team. Now we're headed into week 2. One quick note I want to make is that a lot of this will be based off of a week 1 performance. Some of it preconceived notions about these teams, but a lot based on what we saw in week 1. Nonetheless, let us get going. 2026 mock draft season will feature the New Orleans Saints. I still think that the Saints are not going to be able to be dynamic enough offensively with just kind of their lack of weapons and my lack of belief in Spencer Rattler. Their defense is going to look decent, I think, for the first couple months. Very veteran led. Cam Jordan played really solid against the Cardinals, but ultimately they came up short for a reason. The Miami Dolphins, I think that is going to fall apart very, very fast in Miami. I think Mike McDaniel might be the first, might be the first head coach fired this season. Tyreek Hill, I think, could certainly request a trade. To a turnover. There's a reason that I just never rank him high and don't believe in him. And I've told you guys countless times that I just don't believe in Tua. And I've gotten some pushback from Dolphins fans, but this is the exact reason why. I put the New York Giants in this tier. I'm going to put them in this tier as long as Russell Wilson is starting. And I get it, the offensive line isn't great, so you don't want to throw Jackson Dart out there behind that unit. But with Russell Wilson as the starting quarterback of this team, they're just simply not going to be dynamic enough offensively to compete with the good teams in the NFL. The Cowboys look a little bit better than they were advertised to be. Philly and Washington, their division, a tough schedule at this point. As long as Russ is starting, I think that the Giants should start planning for the 2026 draft, if I'm being completely honest here. Looking around, the Cleveland Browns as well make this. I thought that the Browns actually could have had a case to beat the Cincinnati Bengals. The kicker missed the field goal. They had two really weird interceptions where it bounced off their receiver's hands. So the Browns maybe could have been the team that upset the Bengals to open this year, but I think that's more a story on the Cincinnati Bengals than I really do it is the Cleveland Browns. They still are very void of talent. They had absolutely no run game. Their defense is decent, but it's just not enough for me to move them out of that tier. I'm going to put the Tennessee Titans in this tier. I actually think despite a really bad box score, Cam Ward did show signs of being a decent future NFL quarterback. The mobility, the escapability was there. Really fit the ball into some tight windows, had a lot of zip on it, but his weapons just had a lot of drops. And then as well in this tier, I'm going to have the Carolina Panthers, man. They looked really, really bad. They looked like the Carolina Panthers to open last year, not the Carolina Panthers to close last year. Bryce Young played some really bad football, some really questionable decision making, a bad interception, and ultimately, I just don't believe in the Panthers going into week 2 and so on. And maybe it's an overreaction to week 1, but they looked really, really bad. Into the Frisky tier here now, and I'm going to, in this tier, still have the Arizona Cardinals. They didn't impress me a ton. I felt like once they got up in that game, they kind of just sat on it. They knew they were playing New Orleans, didn't have to put their foot on the gas. Kyler Murray was sick, but I don't know. They just didn't look dynamic enough to me to go out there and get that win. And I get it, dynamic's been my favorite word lately, but truthfully, I felt like that is what they lacked, some dynamicism to their game. I'm going to put the Atlanta Falcons in this tier as well. I thought that a very injury-riddled Buccaneers team came into their building and beat them. And ultimately, I don't believe in Michael Penix at a high degree. The offense was shaky. The defense was questionable. Atlanta, I think, is one of the more overrated teams in all of football at this point in time. I'm going to as well put the New York Jets in the Frisky tier here. Listen, I thought that the Jets played their asses off versus Pittsburgh, but how much of that was Justin Fields was practicing against that defense for all of last year, the motivation coming into the game, Pittsburgh's defense having to figure some things out, or how much of that is that the Jets are actually a good football team? I don't know, but I'll move them up into the Frisky tier at this point in time. And then I'm still going to put the Jacksonville Jaguars in this tier. I know some people watched the game versus the Panthers and became pretty high on the Jacksonville Jaguars. To me, that was more an indictment of the Panthers than it was a big up the performance for the Jags. Trevor Lawrence still missed some pretty bad throws, and the run game was really great under Travis Etienne, but the Panthers had the worst run defense in football last year. And then they open up this year, giving up 170 yards on the ground to Travis Etienne. To me, I'm going to believe that's more of a Panther story than a Jaguar story, but at the end of the day, at home, they picked up a multi-score victory over the team that they were facing. So I'm going to leave them in the Frisky category. We move to the Fringe Playoffs tier, and I'm going to put the Cincinnati Bengals in this tier. I still think that it's just kind of the same team as last year, man. And last year's team started off slow, and then the offense figured it out, and they looked like a better team week to week. It's kind of what I expect to happen this year, too. It's just kind of been the routine for the Bengals at this point. Start off slow and shaky in the first couple weeks. Usually they lose, so congrats that they actually won this one. The defense still didn't look good. The offensive line looked bad, but Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Chase Brown, that offensive core, the past few years when they're healthy, it's been shown to be good enough to be a fringe playoff team. Maybe this year they sneak in because they do win some of these earlier on games. I don't know, but to me, it just doesn't feel like a good to great football team, if I'm being honest. I'm going to put the Raiders in this tier. Again, I thought Geno played a really good game versus the Patriots. He had 376 passing yards. Bowers, Jacoby Myers, he was hitting them well. Their division is still just absolutely brutal, and it's really, really tough based on what we saw in week one. But ultimately, Pete Carroll seems to be coaching up that defense. The run game was a little shaky, but I think that they can get that going. I also think the Patriots might just have a pretty decent defensive line. Oh, speaking of the Patriots, I forgot to put them in the Frisky tier. The Patriots are frisky. They're not fringe playoffs. Drake May did not look good in that game. Sorry about that. The Raiders, yeah, they looked pretty solid in their game, I would say overall. I'm going to put Seattle in fringe playoffs. I think Seattle's defense could be good enough to carry them to some wins, but that offense, it didn't make sense to me going into the year. I couldn't figure out how it was going to work with JSN and Cooper Kupp. I thought moving on from Geno to Sam Darnold was a bit of a bad move. Moving off of DK Metcalf for another slot receiver didn't make sense to me. And then their offense really struggled in week one against the 49ers, who last year they didn't have a great defense. Did Saleh come in and fix those guys overnight? Maybe that's the story there. To me, the story that I saw was Seattle's offense is going to be shaky at best this year, even with the addition of Kubiak. I'm as well going to put the Indianapolis Colts in this fringe playoffs tier. I thought that they executed at a really high level. I do think that Miami is one of the worst teams in football, but the Colts beat up on them. 7 drives, 7 scoring drives. Daniel Jones came in and executed the Shane Steichen offense really well. Jonathan Taylor looked good. Pittman, Tyler Warren, the defense looked strong. It's all you could have asked for the Colts in a week one game. As well in the fringe playoffs tier, I'm going to include the Dallas Cowboys. I thought that the Dallas Cowboys week one against the Philadelphia Eagles actually impressed me decently so. Their defensive line was way better than I thought it was going to be. The Kenny Clark addition, the Micah Parsons exit, maybe Jerry Jones was cooking something there. Obviously, Micah was great for Green Bay, but it did look to me like Dallas's defense played better in this game than they had played all of last year. Dak looked pretty solid. If it wasn't for a couple drops from his receivers, maybe they could have played upset to the defending Super Bowl champions. Next, we move into the playoff teams tier here. I'm going to start with the Denver Broncos in this tier. They feel like a playoff team to me. The offense left a lot of meat on the bone, left a lot to be desired versus the Titans, but the Titans have a decent defense. I don't know if the miscommunication was, Bo Nix not playing well or his receivers not being in the right spot. You clearly saw some frustration there, but the run game with RJ Harvey and J.K. Dobbins looked solid, and that defense looked excellent. It still looked like the premier defense in all of football. So you give the offense a couple weeks to clean things up. Sean Payton will probably get this team rolling, and Denver will look way better than they were looking. I'm going to put the Buccaneers in this tier as well. I think without, their starting left tackle, Tristan Wirfs out there, Baker Mayfield without Chris Godwin and Jalen McMillan still went out there, 3 passing touchdowns, got it done. Emeka Egbuka looked solid, and the defense under Todd Bowles was performing. Call this an overreaction if you want, but I'm going to put the Detroit Lions in this tier. The Detroit Lions, they still fall in this playoff team tier for me because I think that they have a ton of talent, but they looked like they desperately missed Ben Johnson, desperately missed Aaron Glenn, and that offensive line losing Ragnow and Zeitler, like they looked like a shell of themselves. Maybe the story there is the Packers defense, but to me, Detroit looked like a team that really their window closed on them, and maybe they'll have enough talent, but Jared Goff looked pretty bad. 10 of his 31 completions were to Jahmyr Gibbs for 30 yards. So kind of, hiding behind a completion percentage there as they were just empty completions. The run game couldn't get going. David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs combined average for like 2.2 yards per carry. It was just a disaster of game one. I'm not really overreacting to the loss. I'm just reacting to the way that they lost, I would say. The Chicago Bears, to me, looked like a playoff team. I know Caleb was getting some shit and some hate for his performance, but the Minnesota Vikings won 14 games last year. They have a ton of talent on that roster, and they only lost by 3 points. And I thought, when on schedule, the Bears looked very good. If Ben Johnson can coach this team up to be that team 75-80% of the time, they will win a lot of football games and they will compete for the playoffs. I got the San Francisco 49ers as well in this tier. The 49ers, they fought hard. I thought Saleh had that defense performing better. McCaffrey, when healthy, is an absolute game changer for them. We saw the best and worst of Purdy in that game. Some questionable throws, but some great escapability. The Niners, I think, with their schedule as well, should be a playoff team. I got Washington in this tier as well. It's where I had them last week, and they played the Giants, who were just really disappointing. I thought Jaden Daniels still looked really solid. Deebo Samuel was a great addition based on his week one performance, and they looked like the tougher team. If they could do that against the Packers as well, they'll certainly move up another tier. I got Pittsburgh in this playoff team tier as well. I thought that Aaron Rodgers really balled out for them in week one. I thought he looked uber impressive. And the run game, hopefully they could figure that out. The defense, I would bet on that being good. Tomlin, TJ Watt, Rand, like they'd have enough talent on that side of the ball that I think it was a little fluky that the defense didn't look good. Then you could say it's fluky that the passing game looked good as well, but I still think Pittsburgh is a playoff team. And then I got the Houston Texans rounding out this tier. A disappointing loss to the Rams, couldn't find the end zone in that game. The offensive line has a lot to figure out. We'll see how long that takes. Offensive line usually takes the longest to figure out. Higgins and Knoll looked like rookies in week one, and ultimately, when push came to shove, Stafford made the plays that Stroud just didn't. But I still think Stroud and the Texans are a playoff team and are the best team in their division. We get to the Super Bowl contender tier, and I'm going to put the Minnesota Vikings in this tier. I got some pushback last week for putting the Vikings in this tier. And listen, the team won 14 games last season. They come into this year, they improved the offensive line. They improved the defensive line. We saw it on Monday Night Football. Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave making plays on a defensive line where you already have Grenard, Van Ginkel, and Dallas Turner. Very solid unit. Kevin O'Connell showed you why he was the coach of the year last year. Brian Flores might be the best defensive coordinator in football. The weapons, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison serving a suspension right now. Don't forget about him. Thielen, Naylor, Hawkinson, Aaron Jones. Jordan Mason looked excellent in his debut. And J.J. McCarthy showed you willpower, showed you fortitude, showed you mental toughness in that game. That comeback in the second half, 3 straight touchdown drives to close out the game before the just eventual, 3 runs and a punt. Before that, 3 straight touchdown drives. JJ threw 2, ran 1 in. I still believe in the Vikings, man. I'm not going to apologize for having them as a Super Bowl contender. As well, in the Super Bowl contenders tier, I have the Los Angeles Rams. It was a sloppy game. It was a slow game versus the Texans, but ultimately you can't discount the plays that Matthew Stafford made. Puka Nacua looked like a top 5 receiver in football, and that Rams defense looks real legit, man. This team, if you can keep Stafford healthy with him, McVay, Puka, Adams, Kyron, and that defensive line performing the way that they were, they're certainly Super Bowl contenders. I'm moving Kansas City down to the Super Bowl contenders tier. I have some real questions about that offensive line with Worthy injured now and Rice on suspension. I just don't know where their offensive production is going to come from. They don't appear to be a two-dimensional offense with a real run game. Mahomes was their leading rusher on that Friday night game versus the Chargers, and the defense was still able to be picked apart by Justin Herbert. A lot of questions in Kansas City. It's not questioning Mahomes and Reed, but some of the pieces around them feel like they've taken a step back. And I'm going to as well put the Chargers in that Super Bowl contenders tier, man. We'll see if the Chargers can keep up how high level their offense was. But to me, that was a big win over Kansas City on Friday night. I thought that Justin Herbert looked like a potential MVP candidate. And with Omarion Hampton and Najee Harris finding their roles, I do think it'll be a two-dimensional offense. The Chiefs had one of the best run defenses in football last year. I'd like to see Omarion Hampton in another game. They play Monday night versus the Raiders. Keenan Allen looked really special for them. Looks like he's going to be a big piece. McConkey, Quentin Johnston starting to pay off some of that first round draft capital. And the defense was solid, man. Jim Harbaugh and Justin Herbert, a combination that I wasn't sleeping on. And they're even exceeding my expectations right now. They're a Super Bowl contender. And then we get to the Super Bowl favorites tier, man. I'm going to put the Baltimore Ravens in this tier, and I'll put them next to the Buffalo Bills, and we'll just kind of talk about both of them together. 41-40, Sunday Night Football, an absolute show. Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen have been battling out for MVPs for years. You saw it in this game. You saw exactly why. In terms of regular season success, lately, these have been the two best quarterbacks, bar none, in football. Josh Allen, over 400 all-purpose yards, leads that comeback. Lamar Jackson, I don't even think he made a wrong play at all in that game. Derrick Henry on the Ravens, the defensive talent that both of these teams have, just weren't able to even exceed because of how great the quarterback talents were. To me, those felt like the two best teams in the AFC, and they just ran into each other week one and gave us an absolute show. I got Green Bay in this tier. I think that Green Bay's defensive scheme was really solid last year, and what Micah Parsons added, Micah Parsons' presence was immediately felt. The pick that Jared Goff threw in the first quarter, Micah Parsons pressuring him. One of the sacks that Rashawn Gary had, Micah Parsons ran Jared Goff into him. The sack that Micah Parsons had in the fourth quarter, like his handprints were all over this game. The offense is two-dimensional with Jordan Love and Josh Jacobs in that attack. Matt LaFleur is one of the better head coaches in football. The trenches are good. The secondary was decent. I do have my questions still about, is Jordan Love going to cut down on the turnover-worthy plays? And do they have a dependable target that they can trust in big spots? But they have all season to figure that out. The talent on this roster, to me, and how well they played, they bodied Detroit, man. They feel like a Super Bowl favorite next to the Philadelphia Eagles, the defending Super Bowl champions. Philly, obviously, it was a sloppy week one. Jalen Hurts, I thought, looked really impressive despite the counting stats not being there. He looked like the best player on the football field in that game. You still have Saquon Barkley. A.J. Brown only had one catch in this game. Jalen Carter ejected, and you still win. The lightning delay, like, it was just a really messy game. I'm not taking anything away from Philly production wise. I thought that they went out there and showed you the toughness of that team, and the talent on the roster is still undeniable. So this is my tier list post week one and going into week two. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you love the NFL and you're not yet subscribed to this YouTube channel, hit that button. I will catch you next time. Peace.